Welcome to the second hour of the Tailored Experience. This is Asha Love in this club featuring Young Jeezy, Double HP ahead of that with Bosso. My name is Hlekani Shikwambana and you are listening to the Tailored Experience. We are now joined by relationship expert Paula Quinsee to chat to us about other forms of abuse that we often downplay, dismiss, or even fail to recognize. Good morning, Paula. Welcome to the Tailored Experience.
Hi, Hlekani. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
My pleasure, and a hello to the listeners as well.
Now, Paula, what are the other forms of abuse that we often downplay, dismiss, or even fail to recognize?
So some of the common forms of abuse is controlling finances. So, for example, one person earns more than the other, or they are the only breadwinner in the household, and so they dictate and control how money is spent. So, for example, let's say one partner gives the other partner money to go and buy groceries, and when they come back from buying groceries, they have to submit slips and account for every single cent that they have spent buying groceries. So that's a form of control and abuse. Another form of control and abuse is what we call silent treatment or stonewalling. So, for example, you're trying to communicate or explain yourself or connect with the other person or your partner, and that person just stonewalls you. In other words, they block you out or they give you silent treatment. So there's no engagement, no interaction, no connection, no communication. Other forms of abuse is, for example, children, particularly blended families. So blended families is where partners have been married or in a relationship before. They have children from that relationship, and now they have got together in a new relationship. And so it's a case of, for example, stepmother or father and stepchildren. And the one partner then actually takes it out on the children. In other words, treats them differently to their own children, and there's different sets of rules and different ways of interacting and behaving and disciplining when it comes to those children.
So Paula, in your press release, you spoke about how this behavior depends on the upbringing. Please tell us a little bit more about that.
So our conditioning and from our childhood and our upbringing plays a large role in defining and shaping who we become and our perspective on the world. In other words, how we see love and relationships. So if you've grown up in an abusive environment, that will become your norm. That becomes your frame of reference. So you don't know anything else or anything different. And so it's almost like you expect that because that's what you are used to. That is what life has been about for you. And so subconsciously we identify with those traits in another person. And when we seek a partner, we identify with those potential traits and then we'll replicate that in our adult relationships by getting into a relationship that is abusive or with an abusive person.
Now, I mean, with the current society having a lot of broken homes or broken families where children are raised by single parents, how do we then show them a good example of what a good relationship should be or even look like?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And it really does come down to positive role model. So even as a single parent, how can you be a positive role model for your child, as well as the other influences that this child has in their life, for example, grandparents, uncles, aunties, etc. And it's about trying to provide them with as an emotional, stable foundation as possible, teaching them things such as values, disciplining them in a healthy or a positive way versus a negative way. So a lot of the conversations recently, particularly the Children's Act that's just been passed, where you cannot hit your child anymore, it's a criminal offense. So it's how do you find other ways of disciplining your child, teaching them about consequences, value systems, choices, etc.
Now, I mean, you also state that, low self-esteem is one of the reasons why people do not leave abusive relationships. If I am in that situation, then how can I or one increase their own self-esteem?
Yeah, abusive relationships are very complex to deal with because part of that is codependency. So because we have a low self-esteem or low self-worth, often we believe that we deserve that kind of treatment or that behavior, or because of the fear that has been driven into us. So, for example, being threatened that our children will be taken away from us, or there is narcissism involved. So it really is about working on yourself, either getting help, whether it be therapy or counseling, and there are lots of avenues that you can turn to. For example, Lifeline offers free telephonic and face-to-face counseling. Getting help to build a healthy sense of self in terms of your self-worth and your identity and your values and your boundaries, and then standing up for yourself in terms of what you will and won't tolerate from a behavior and a treatment perspective. Because at the end of the day, we teach people how to treat us by what we allow and disallow.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation with us, Paula. I really do appreciate it. So how does one get in touch with you, and also even get to read the article that you wrote?
Absolutely. You can get in touch with me. I'm on all the social media platforms, so Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and my website, paulaquinsee.com.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the day and enjoy the weekend.
Thank you, and to you and the listeners too.
There you have it, man. There are so many things that happen. Can you imagine that when somebody stonewalls you, we don't see it as abuse. We don't even recognize it as abuse, but that definitely is abuse. I think we need to be a little bit more aware of how our relationship dynamics are standing, and also see how they are benefiting us as an individual as well. Thank you so much yet again to Paula for having this conversation.